Hello, it's Cisvolk. Time to enjoy card making with me. I have here two stamps from AlINACRAFT. They can be used as regular background stamps, but I'm going to do something completely different with them. Now that the days are getting darker again, I feel like stitching on my cards, and I find these stamps very suitable for that. You don't necessarily need a stencil or die specifically, or any understanding of embroidery. It's very doable and I'm going to show you how. Now if you aren't interested in stitching, I encourage you to keep watching. I have card making tips for you along the way, and you also can make these cards also without stitching and do only the stamping part. The stamp on the right is a very nice big square clear stamp. This one on the left consists of loose strips of clear stamps that have an embroidery pattern. You just stick those on a clear block or stamping tool and make a border or background on your card. I also used this stamp in the video about clear blocks. Be sure to check that video out too. It contains lots of card making tips. The link for it is in the top right corner and in the information below this video. There you will also find links to the products in the store. For today's card series I'm using cards made of craft paper with a card panel of 250 gram smooth DCP paper on top. This panel is half a centimeter smaller than the card on all sides. On this panel we are going to stamp. To start I chose a simple stamp. I stick it on a clear block. The lines on the block are useful to see if the stamp is stuck on straight. With brown ink, I use Memento Toffee Crunch, which is a color that goes well with craft by the way. I stamp twice on the panel. I use the lines engraved in the clear block to see if I stamp straight. I tell more about it in my video on clear blocks, but feel free to use a stamping tool if that is more convenient to you. I stamp this stamp twice, once with the lines down and once with the lines up. I leave enough space to stamp another stamp in between. As you can see, I stamp a little at the bottom of the card, leaving room at the top for an image and text. For the middle embroidery strip, I chose a kind of star, which I also like to match a winter Christmas sweater, and that is also the theme of the cards I will be making. This one I also ink again with the brown ink. Although with the other cards I make I often do this in a different color to match the floss I want to stitch with. So before you start stamping, see what colors of paper and ink you have at hand and what colors of floss go with it. These little bears are so very cute to me. They fit very well with this border that looks a bit like the pattern of a winter sweater. But I believe I would also use some of the bears for a children's card or bird card maybe. First I stamp the text on the card and I emboss that text with blue embossing powder. So before stamping I make my paper anti-static with some talcum powder that I put in a tightly knotted panty stocking. I stamp with a clear block now, which goes fine when you use a good wet ink pad. But it can also be done with a stamping tool of course, when your ink pad is a bit drier or when you find it more comfortable to work with a stamping tool. With Versamark ink or other ink especially for embossing, you usually don't see much of the stamped image because of the transparent color, but you don't have to as long as it is sticky. Here I use light blue embossing powder from AlINACRAFT. There are many different colors. Some colors seem to have less powder in the jar, but this is not so. The powder goes by weight, so then has a different mass than a different color. But in terms of weight, all colors have the same amount of powder. I stamped several bears with Versamark ink and embossed them with transparent embossing powder. It makes the bear shiny and makes it easier to color within the lines. I color the bear with only 3 colors of pencil. By pressing harder and more often on the same spot, the color becomes more intense and darker. This way I create shadow. These are Nouveau pencils that I use here, and I only have a small set of them, so I can't go over each other with many colors, but that is not necessary at all. I make the edges of the bear slightly darker brown by pressing on the pencil more often and harder, and I make the middle lighter by pressing on the pencil softer. That way you get some dimension in the bear. What I do like about these pencils is that you can easily erase if you have applied a little too much color on one spot. I use some red for the cheeks, and I also use this color on the shadows, like under the chin and behind the paw. So now I do color over the dark areas a second time. You can see that it immediately becomes a little more cuddly. You can use a white Posca marker or white gel pen to add white highlights very nicely. I have here size PC1M. With this I put dots in the eyes and later also in the cheeks. I like the cheeks a little darker so they stand out a little more. Look how cute! And really not hard to do. Now we are going to poke holes in the card panel. For this you need a pricking mat and a thin pricking pen. Try if you can find a pricker or if necessary a needle with a very thin tip. Then you will get the best results. Also look for a needle that is not too thick with an eye that does not stick out. My pricking mat is really an old one. See what you have on hand to put under the card before you start pricking. A couple of layers of fun foam on top of each other works fine too. Then now we're going to poke holes. And I poke the holes on this card just slightly next to the ink. I was hoping you'd see a little bit more of the ink after stitching. You prick one hole at the top, prick with the needle straight down, and then the next hole at the bottom and prick again with the needle straight down into the paper. Now I have found that you can prick exactly on the ink just fine. You don't see much difference after stitching if you've poked right next to or right on the ink. So make it easier on yourself and prick in the ink. Keep your fingers next to the place where you prick, so the paper stays in place. For the stars, you only prick the 3 top and 3 bottom lines, so you don't need to prick a hole in the middle. The lines will overlap anyway. I prick all the way to the edge, because I stamped all the way to the edge. But if you take a larger card or tape the edges, then you won't be bothered by this. After pricking, the paper has become like a sheet of braille text. But those bulging dots are not handy for sticking your needle in later. That is why it's handy to smooth them out with a bone folder first. That is very easy to do. You can see that the holes are closing a bit. You will be able to poke through these closed holes and you will still see them very well. As stitching floss, I found 2 fairly thick threads that I had in my closet, along with a matching needle, not too thick. Also, the eye of the needle should not be thicker than the needle itself, then the hole will get ugly. If your floss is a bit thin, just take 2 or 3 strands of it. I already have one edge covered, as you can see. I started on the right side of the panel. Also for the bottom border we stitch from right to left, which is why I am now holding it upside down. With a piece of tape we tape the thread to the back edge. Preferably stick it where there are no holes. Since my pattern runs across the edge of the card, I also embroider around the edge. It might make the stitching a little trickier. Now if you find that difficult, start a little further into the pattern and later finish the last bit around the border with a new thread. I insert the thread through the stitch at the back and do this twice. Then the thread around the border is secure, and then I can also insert back into the same hole to the front of the card. Okay, from here the repeating pattern stitch is going to start. We prick into the top hole, front to back. We are holding the resulting loop, so don't pull it all the way through the hole. And go back at the back. When the needle is at the top, you release the loop and pull the stitch. Then at the front you stitch back into the hole at the top left, you hold the loop again, and at the back you stitch back into the hole right below it. You stitch from bottom right to top left, and at the back there will be all straight lines. If you look closely at the back, there will be all straight lines. Now I continue with the stars with a cream color thread. But on the spot where I glued the bear, I skipped the embroidery. That would be covered anyway, and you won't see anything. So that saves me from doing some stitching. Then I only have to continue here. When stitching the stars, you always use the same order. Then you get a nice even flow or grain. First the outer lines and then the middle lines. The same with each star, otherwise you will see a difference. From bottom right to top left, and from top right to bottom left, and then the middle one last. If you do it right, you will see only horizontal short stripes at the back. If you see crazy stripes on the back, then you know you probably made a mistake in the sequence. To stitch off, pull the strand through the back of the thread a few times. It doesn't really matter, you'll be gluing the panel to the card later anyway. But of course you can stick tape on it now as well. I cut the little bear with fine scissors. I leave a small white edge around the bear. That way it will stand out better on the paper. Cutting slowly with crisp scissors gives the best results. I did not speed this up. I taped the stitch panel with double-sided tape, just because I find this the nicest thing to do. With glue the card will quickly bulge or glue might come through the holes. I glue the little bear on with 3D foam blocks. Ah, look how cute! Now this is a Christmas card, but when this would be a card with any other text on it and I sprinkle these little cloud resin shakers on top, look how much fun this makes the card. Super cute, eh? Very suitable for a baby born. If you are looking for a link to any of the products, you can find them under my videos and in my link tree Cisvolk. Since it will be a Christmas card and I want a different style, I am adding these gold gems. This way it suddenly looks like a Christmas card, and very pretty if I say so myself. On the envelope I stamped the border with the same stamps. And because I cannot stitch on the envelope, I use embossing powder instead of a thread. To make the stitching also look real, I draw over the stamp impression with pencil. So it looks like embroidered thread. Here you can see that I also stamped the flap of the envelope. And now this is not my very best card, and maybe your first card is not the prettiest either. But more importantly, I think, I had fun stitching on a card, and well, the person who receives the card is probably happy with it and not as critical as me or you, right? For my next card I choose different stitches to do my stitching. The principle is the same again. Although again I hope to give you some tips. With this pattern I first prick all the center holes in a straight line, one after the other. Then I prick all the ends. Quite relaxing to do, I think. The crosses could be in a straight line, but if you have trouble making them straight, I recommend using a metal ruler. I find that pricking along the ruler is actually much faster. I flattened the holes on the back again with the bone folder, and now we can stitch again. Again I stitch around the border. If you find this difficult, make your card panel a little bigger, or mask off the edge before you start stamping, then it will always fit. This time I hold the thread at the back and make sure that the thread gets stuck to the stitches created at the back. But if you find it easier to put a tape on it, feel free to do so, no one will see the difference. I find the stitching a bit hard to explain. Anyway, doing a voiceover is quite a job. I assume you can see how I do it and figure out how it works while stitching. This stitch pattern doesn't require much thought. Stripe by stripe and the midline will appear automatically. You can't avoid making a mess on the back side though. This row is now finished. I put the thread through the loops on the back and cut it off. Then I push a few more holes closed with the bone folder. I like it better when they are flattened, but that's totally your own preference of course, you don't have to. The cross stitch is very easy again. If you stitch sparingly, you will see all the stripes on the back as you see here. If you were to make crosses on the back as well, it would become a proppy hole and you would waste a lot of floss. Make sure that you always stitch in the same direction and that the top thread points in the same direction at all the crosses. This gives the best result. I finished this card with a nice stamp and some white stripes as a detail on the bear's scarves. Then I add some cute shiny stars that would also go very well in a shaker card. Also, these sequins can be found in AlINACRAFT store. You can find the links in the descriptions of this video. On the envelope I again stamped the same pattern and this time traced it over with pencil. This pencil line also gives a stitch effect. This card became very different again because of the use of color and the different embroidery stitches. Also here I closed the holes a little bit with the bone folder. The glitter stars give a cheerful effect. For our next card I want to make a red-brown combination. Remember to heat emboss first before stitching, otherwise the powder will get between the threads and you will blow off the tape again with the heat tool, which would not be very convenient. This bright red color embossing powder is really nice in combination with this craft paper. When poking the holes, it's nice if you keep your fingers close, so you don't keep pulling the paper up. If you don't have a pricking pen, you can also prick holes with the needle you use to do your stitching. It's just a little less nicer for your fingers and the holes are also a little smaller, but that's nicer, just less practical. For this pattern you only need to prick the vertical lines. The midline becomes a straight thread. Easy, straightforward. Don't forget to press the holes at the back. This really makes poking the needle in the back much easier, you'll see. I split my DMC floss in half, leaving 3 loose threads, which I thread through my needle. You start again by stitching in at the back of the paper. You start on one side of the bow. On the back again you tape your floss end or hold it with your finger to have it able to get under the stitches of the back side of the paper. At the top of the paper you insert on the other side of the bow. Now at the top of the paper you leave the thread a little loose. Then you insert at the back where the rod is. Meanwhile, I also hold the stitching floss at the back. By reinserting at the back, the loose end at the back gets stuck between the back stitches. I don't pull the floss on the top too tight. And then you can see when I finish the figure and pull on the floss that it has become a bow. Actually, it's very nice to learn to stitch patterns this way. I have now finished the row and found for you the easiest way to do this stitch. I'm briefly holding the card the other way now, that way it's easier and hopefully you can see it better. With your thumb you hold the loop down when you insert in the center at the back. Then pull the thread loosely and finish the stitch. Parallel lines will form at the back. Again, you start at the back of the card. Then you insert on the opposite side of the bow. Hold the loop with your thumb and on the back you insert again in the middle hole. Then you pull the floss and finish by inserting the bottom stitch. For the other stitches I will make the line first and then the stitches will come on top. For that I tape the line with tape. Unfortunately I have to tape over the holes, but I'll just poke through that later. By the way, if you have problems with the holes because they rip out, for example, it is a good idea to stick tape or plastic tape on the back of the paper. You should do this before pricking the holes. It can also be a good idea to do this if you want to stitch together with the children. The tape makes the paper a little firmer and easier to work with. And this is how it turned out. With a matching envelope. Nice looking, right? I added some gold acrylic gems. Then I want to show you that you can also use a stamp with only dots as a base for stitching. I'm really a fan of AlINACRAFT's background stamps. She has lots of great big square stamps that fit all kinds of card sizes. This stamp is sturdy and sticks really well. I really have to use force to get it off. I don't want to stamp the whole card, but a few squares in the middle. First, when laying it down, I look carefully to make sure the diamonds are the same distance on both sides of the card. Then I tape part of the stamp with purple tape before applying the ink. Remember to remove the tape before stamping. I am still using the same brown ink. I now have a pattern of 4 times 4 diamonds, of which half with dots in the middle. I chose 3 different colors of floss for this pattern that are going to match the colors of the colored in bears that I stick with it. And I only pierced holes in the shapes with an extra diamond in the middle. But of those I only pierced the outer edge with holes. The floss I used this time is a bit thinner than the thick floss, but thicker than a strand of DMC floss. Handy for this is to thread a long piece of floss to the center of the needle, so that this way you stitch 2 threads at the same time. There are 2 different patterns that I want to show you. I start here by stitching the first sample shape. Start by stitching into the hole right next to the tip. I'll tell you later why you don't want to start at the tip. Then on the exact opposite side of the pattern, stitch in again. On the back side, you insert again 1 hole next to it, but not towards the tip. You see, we go diagonally across. And on the back side we are slanting up another hole. And then diagonally across again. You see the thread is covering the dots underneath, which for me is the intention. You continue until all the holes are filled. If the last thread on top goes straight from tip to tip, the end result looks the best, which is why you had to start not at the tip, but 1 hole next to it. The same goes for the next diamond pattern. I will be stitching with gold floss. With the pattern of the blue yarn, you would insert below. You go diagonally to the other side. But now we are making a different figure. Now I insert here. This way the thread hides the dots underneath. Look. On the back I'll insert again 1 hole lower. And then on the front I go across again and insert 1 hole to the left. And so we go all around. When you're all the way around, you see that on the back you've stitched all stripes. And if you've done it right, then you have done each stripe twice. Do you see? They are doubled up, while the dark blue ones are single. You do the same with the diamond next to it. Now I don't have to tape or restitch, I can go directly to the right hole with the thread. I'll show it a little more clearly with a dark blue thread. In this pattern I go straight across the inner dots. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes away. The first set of inner holes is already hidden by the thread this way. On the back I go 1 hole further, clockwise. At the front I go to the opposite side and 1 hole back, counterclockwise. And then on the back again 1 more hole, as long as you turn the card exactly as I do, of course. In the beginning it looks very easy because you can clearly see where you left off, but halfway through the pattern the confusion starts and then you have to pay attention. You stitch counterclockwise at the front and clockwise at the back. On the back again 1 hole backwards. At a certain point, when you can't remember, it is very useful to count back the 7 holes. I will show you in a moment. One side of the figure is now filled. See how all the stripes on the back are already stitched once and it looks like you are doing it wrong. But we'll just keep going. Sometimes you can see where you want to come up with your thread on the front, but not on the back where you need to stick it in. Then it is handy to stick the needle in and briefly peek on the other side to see where it should go in. But counting is always most reliable. On the back you are going over the same hole for the second time, while on the front you see new lines forming. And if at the front you don't remember where to go, you just count back 6 holes and insert into the 7th hole. Now should it happen to you that a loop forms, like I have here now, then the best thing to do is the following. You insert the needle into the loop and then very gently pull the loop up with the needle. If you were to pull on the thread without the needle in, you have a chance of making a knot, and you want to avoid that. I also regularly let my thread hang and swing briefly to get the twist out of it. Sometimes I briefly lose where I left off and quickly poke in to see where to show up on the other side. On the back side we're going to stitch all the stripes twice and it's going to be alright. To be sure if I am sticking to the pattern, I count 7 holes to the right. Once you see that you stitched all lines at the back twice, then you are around. You see, I put my floss in everywhere twice. I recommend you to use no more than 2 strands of DMC floss, as it will be too bulgy when you cross over the same spot this much. In the end you get this result. I alternated between the colors and the stitches I used. On the back side of both patterns you see only running stitches. With the open diamonds you see the threads double stitched, and with the closed diamonds the threads are single stitched. I decorated this card with a colored bear and the text Joy. The Joy die is from this set. It also says hope, peace, belief, faith and Merry Christmas. When I want to die cut a narrow text, I like to die cut from paper that already has double-sided tape behind it. Here I stuck a small piece of gold cardstock on one side of a piece of double-sided tape. Then I stick the protective film back on, and that way you can easily cut out a piece of paper without your scissors getting sticky. Here I die cut out the text. I do very carefully not to damage the cutout shape and preferably use a needle to loosen the text from the shape. And also very handy to float the text above the card to get a good look at what the result will look when you stick it on. I did add a few gold acrylic gems to go with it for some dimension and shine. and a nice matching envelope to top it all off. To stamp on the envelope, I also taped the stamp again. So I only inked one row of diamonds at a time. I did that twice, once for gold embossing powder and once for blue embossing powder. So this is what the result looks like. So first one row stamped and embossed with Versamark and then the other row. I made this card off camera again in red color. Here I only worked with red and gold. And honestly, I have to admit that this has become my absolute favorite card. 3 dense red diamonds. Here under the bears I didn't have to stitch. The same goes for the gold diamonds. I stitched them with the open pattern and only stitched 3 times. The gold floss matches the gold stamped sentiment beautifully. I also raised the bear stamp again with foam blocks. With a white pen I drew dots and dashes on the scarves. Well, isn't that cute? Let me briefly show you the bear stamp again. I used this one, that one, and this one. I didn't use this one. I thought it was more appropriate for a bird card after I colored it. Of course, you can use the stockings very well for Christmas cards too. For all products you will find links in the description below this video. When you buy something, after clicking on one of the links, I get a few cents commission. For you it makes no difference. You pay the same price as if you went directly to the website and looked up the products yourself. But it helps me to make more and better videos for you. The links also make searching easy for you. So I hope you'll think of me when you go shopping on AliExpress or Amazon. Thank you for that. I'm editing more videos where I make Christmas cards. So subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button so you won't miss any of my new videos. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time. Bye bye!